Brought to you by Penguin.
The Young H.G. Wells, Changing the World, by Claire Tomalin. Read by Leighton Pugh. Preface. In the summer of 1914, two 11-year-old boys, Eric and Cyril, friends at boarding school, became obsessed by a story they were both reading. It was called The Country of the Blind. The book belonged to Cyril, but Eric kept borrowing it and having to return it. One night Eric was so desperate to go on reading that he kept himself awake until 4 a.m. It was midsummer and the sun was already up, and he crept along the corridor to Cyril's dormitory, pinched it from beside his bed, took it back to his own bed, and read on. The story was by H.G. Wells, who is currently their favourite writer. What Eric liked about Wells was that he interested himself in science, in mysteries and prophecies, the planets and the bottom of the sea, flying and aerial warfare, space travel, Martians, mermaids, angels, creatures on the moon, distant islands where animals were turned into monstrous men. All these fascinating subjects were quite outside the interests of Eric's middle-class family, or the subjects his teachers were grinding into him and Cyril, Greek and Latin, and whatever was needed to get him into a public school, preferably Eton. Both their backgrounds were conventional in every way. Wells was not conventional or even respectable. Whether or not Eric and Cyril knew that he was a Republican, an atheist and a socialist, they were enthralled by his stories, his thrillingly convincing accounts of what he imagined, and his forecasting of the future, technological, social, and political. Both Eric and Cyril won scholarships to Eton, and both became distinguished writers. Cyril Connolly as an editor and essayist, Eric, under the name he chose for himself, George Orwell. During the Second World War, Orwell wrote and Connolly published in Horizon, the highly regarded magazine he edited, an article about Wells's effect on him. Thinking people who were born about the beginning of this century are in some sense Wells's own creation. I doubt whether anyone who was writing books between 1900 and 1920, at any rate in the English language, influenced the young so much. The minds of all of us, and therefore the physical world, would be perceptibly different if Wells had never existed. Back in the 1900s, it was a wonderful experience for a boy to discover H.G. Wells. There you were in a world of pedants, clergymen and golfers, with your future employers exhorting you to get on or get out, your parents systematically warping your sexual life, and your dull-witted schoolmasters sniggering over their Latin tags, and here was the wonderful man who could tell you about the inhabitants of the planets and the bottom of the sea, and who knew that the future was not going to be what respectable people imagined. Up to 1914, Wells was in the main a true prophet. Yet already in that essay, Orwell went on to say that the singleness of mind that made Wells seem an inspired prophet to the Edwardian age made him a shallow, inadequate thinker in 1941, because Wells could not understand the forces of nationalism and religious bigotry. Wells is too sane to understand the modern world. He might have added that Wells believed world government, an effective United Nations, was what we needed. Orwell ended his article by saying, "The succession of lower middle-class novels, which are his greatest achievement, stopped short at the other war and never really began again." In 1942, Orwell described Wells's basic message. Science can solve all the ills that humanity is heir to, but that man is at present too blind to see the possibility of his own powers. And after Wells's death in 1946, writing of how the work of many good writers deteriorates as they grow older, he went on, "We value H.G. Wells for Tono Bungay, Mr. Polly, The Time Machine, etc. If he had stopped writing in 1920...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?